The next day dawned bright and golden over Florence, the sunlight spilling across terracotta rooftops and cobblestone streets. Inside La Bella Luna, the staff was already busy preparing for the new day, polishing glasses, arranging silverware, and folding napkins into perfect triangles. The smell of freshly baked bread filled the air, mixing with the soft scent of coffee beans roasting in the kitchen. For Isabella, it was just another day, or at least that's what she thought. She arrived early as always, tying her apron neatly around her waist and brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. Though she tried not to think about it too much, a part of her still remembered the night before. The insult, the response, and the quiet apology written on that folded note. She kept the note tucked safely in her bag, a small reminder that grace had more power than anger ever could. Around noon, as the first guests began to arrive, Isabella saw something that made her stop mid-step. Standing near the door in a crisp navy blue suit was Alexander Moretti, alone this time. There were no loud friends, no business chatter, and no arrogance written on his face. He looked different. He waited patiently by the hostess stand, his eyes calm, his posture softer than before. When the hostess smiled and offered to show him to a table, he replied quietly, "If possible, I'd like to sit where I did last time." The hostess nodded politely and led him to the same corner table, the one that had witnessed his humiliation and his lesson. From behind the counter, Isabella watched quietly. A part of her wondered if she should go to him or ask someone else to take the table, but then she smiled to herself. Avoidance was never her style. She straightened her apron, took a deep breath, and walked toward him with the same warm smile she greeted every customer with. "Good afternoon, Signor Moretti," she said softly. "It's nice to see you again." Alexander looked up, his expression thoughtful. "Good afternoon, Isabella." Her name came out gently from his mouth this time, not like a command but like a word he had learned to respect. "You remember my name?" she said with a small smile. "How could I forget?" he replied. There was a sincerity in his voice now, the kind that can't be faked. She nodded politely. "Would you like your usual wine?" He chuckled softly. "You remember that too?" "Of course," she said, smiling faintly. "It's part of my job." When she walked away to get his drink, Alexander leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. He had spent the whole night thinking about what had happened, about his behavior, her calmness, and how easily he had made assumptions about someone he didn't even know. He realized he had judged her without knowing her story, and that realization had shaken him more than any business failure ever had. When Isabella returned with his wine, he looked up and said quietly, "Isabella, may I ask you something?" "Of course, sir," she replied, setting the glass down. "Why didn't you embarrass me?" he asked. His tone was sincere, his expression curious. "You could have shouted, humiliated me in front of everyone, and yet you didn't." Isabella looked at him for a moment, surprised by the honesty in his question. Then she smiled gently. "Because shouting doesn't change people, Signor Moretti. It only makes them defensive, but sometimes silence does more than 1,000 words." He nodded slowly, her words sinking deep into him. "You're right," he said softly. "You made me think, and that's something not many people manage to do." She smiled again, this time warmer. Then maybe it was worth it. For the first time, Alexander laughed, not the proud, arrogant laugh from before, but a genuine one. "I suppose it was," he said. They spoke for a few more minutes. Simple conversation, but it felt different. There was respect now, an unspoken understanding between them. When she walked away to serve another table, Alexander watched her go, realizing how rare genuine kindness was in a world that often confused money with worth. When the meal ended, he called her one last time. "Isabella," he said, reaching into his jacket pocket, "I have something for you." She hesitated. "That's not necessary, sir." "I insist," he said. He placed a small white envelope on the table. "It's not money. It's something else." She took it carefully. "Thank you," she said softly. After he left, she opened the envelope. Inside was a short handwritten letter on fine stationery. It read, "Dear Isabella, last night I saw myself through your silence and I didn't like what I saw. You taught me more in a few seconds than I've learned in years of business. I was raised to believe success meant power, but you reminded me that true success is having the grace to respect everyone. Thank you for opening my eyes. Alexander Moretti." Beneath the letter was a business card. At the bottom in his handwriting he had added, "If you ever need a recommendation for your studies, consider this my gratitude." Isabella stared at the note, her eyes soft with emotion. She wasn't moved by the gesture itself, but by the honesty behind it. People didn't change overnight, but he was trying, and that mattered. That evening, as the sunset painted the sky orange and gold, Isabella stepped outside the restaurant, holding the letter close. For her, it wasn't about winning or teaching a lesson. It was about something simpler, knowing she had stood firm in kindness and dignity, and that somehow her calm voice had made someone's world a little better. In the heart of Florence, a waitress and a millionaire had shared a quiet turning point, not through anger but through understanding. And that perhaps was the truest kind of victory.